Wednesday, the 2nd of February. I'm Stephen Ridgway. There is a second campaign of the year targeting Docker, known as Commando Cat. It is a cryptojacking campaign. It's been active since earlier this year, since January this year. It is, however, leveraging Docker in its initial compromise, especially in cloud environments. So the way that this particular attack works is that by getting access to a Docker container, the malware is abusing the ability of a container to mount the host's file system and then running a series of independent payloads directly on the host. So Docker security is not as straightforward as people think. There have been some good steps forward and the understanding of the threats in the last couple of years, but a lot of the stuff that Eliza May was talking about a couple of years ago in a series of talks she gave around Europe about the fact that Docker is out of the box not in any way secure, which went against, at the time, there was very much a dismissal of security in the Docker world because, well, it's a container, so it's secure. It's in a container, except it isn't really, but that's a different matter. So yeah, if you are using Docker, it is worth being aware of these things. Yes, from a Docker container, it's surprising how much of the underlying operating system the Docker container can see, unless it's all been very properly tied down. So be aware of this. It's active campaign at the moment. It's only cryptojacking, but well, if you've got crypto, that's a problem. The concept could be used in all sorts of other ways as well. So, according to the US authorities, the People's Republic of China is accelerating the development of its cyber operations that the PLA believes will be needed in order to deter and confront the US. So there are rumblings, and I'm sure we've all been aware of the rumblings around Taiwan. We're also aware of the fact that China has been stepping up in its military abilities, and for the PLA, the ability to wage war in cyberspace is just part and parcel of modern warfare. Now, bearing in mind that waging war in cyberspace doesn't have to be traditionally offensive type actions. It can be literally just how much disruption can be caused. If a country's power, water and transport and finance, banking and whatever has been disrupted, it significantly impacts their ability to either wage war or defend themselves. So we've all been kind of aware of this, but it is interesting that it's actually been announced via the US government at the moment. So the other side of it is of course that, as we're well aware, Chinese APTs are happy just to hoover up as much data as possible. Within the data that they hoover up, there will be things that they find to be useful. So these things are just, they're squirreled away into enormous databases and then held for investigation later, depending on what the needs are. So be aware that APTs will compromise systems and then lurk for a very, very long time until they're required for whatever the political reasons are that their political masters come up with. So it's on the up again. I'm sure we're all aware of this anyway, but it is a good reminder. Anybody who's listened to this briefing over the last few weeks or months will be aware, I'm sure, of the fact that I have a distrust of biometric security measures. And before you all jump up and down in disagreement with me on this, my concern is that if compromised, you can't easily change your biometrics, your fingerprints, facial recognition software. Well, I mean, I think that one's pretty dodgy anyway, but your face is your face. Yes, you could have plastic surgery, but I'm not sure that it would really work. Even right down to the ultimate biometric authenticator for you is your DNA, but there is something that sits in between you and the authenticated service, and that's digital. So without a second factor of authentication, there is always the risk that your biometric data can be injected into that path, even if you're not present. This particular article in the Register is bringing to attention the fact that biometric authentication systems are not that sophisticated. So they're talking specifically here about facial recognition. Now, okay, originally facial recognition was, so it was seen as being kind of cool until people realized that you just show it a photograph and it would recognize the face. Well, okay, it's got better than that now. It requires, movement, looks for, various aspects of the image that is seen on the screen that indicate that it is actually a human behind it. Unfortunately, deepfake AIs are increasingly being tested against these systems and shown to be able to bypass them. So things like micro movements of your eyes and imperfections of skin and other little bits and pieces. Then these can be recreated using AI deepfakes. There are some systems that require 3D, that can measure 3D. So that's, I think, is a step in the right direction. So it is worth, certainly if you're using facial recognition, it is worth making sure that the systems you're using for facial recognition are actually measuring your face in 3 dimensions and not just looking in 2 dimensions. Again, I'm parking to one side the possibility of injecting something which is the digital footprint of a real scan, but just not there when you're not actually there. Park that whole piece. But something that does 3D recognition of your face is good. However, I think it is probably a good idea to consider biometric authentication, biometric security measures, as only part of a defense in depth strategy for authentication, and certainly being certain that you understand what is being made available to people based on who they are and where they are and so on and so forth. So taking zero trust is hard to get to, but taking a zero trust like approach to things is important, because then at least if your account is being accessed from some unusual part of the world, that should flag up some kind of alert somewhere, hopefully. Anyway, that's all from me for today. Hope you have a good Friday. Hope you have a great weekend, and I shall be back with you all again on